Okay, here we are again, and now we're going to take a look at one-step equations. So one-step equations, this is a topic that you guys learned last year. The problem with one-step equations is that oftentimes they're so intuitive for us to solve that we don't actually have to slow down and work through them step by step. And the reason that that's a problem is because that if you don't master sort of the monotonous steps of solving one-step equations, then what's going to happen when you try to solve two-step equations? Well, okay, still some of those can be solved intuitively, but then guess what? After two-step equations comes three-step equations and five-step equations and multi-step equations and equations where it's not necessarily intuitive anymore, but maybe you didn't develop those foundational skills, and so now you're kind of just lost. So I know on our concept quizzes, I'm very picky about seeing your work, and that's why, because I need to see that you're not just giving me an answer because you know the answer, but that you're learning the process of solving, so that way, as we continue to build and grow, we will be able to solve more complicated problems. Okay, so now I've talked your ear off for a minute and a half. Let's actually solve this problem. 1 equals negative 4w. Let's see here. We go over, we want to show all of our work. So 1 equals negative 4w. And I know that when a number and a letter are smushed together, they actually are being multiplied. I also know that when I'm solving, I want to use reverse order of operations, say D, M, E, P, and I want to undo or use my inverse operations, right? So I want to think, how is that negative 4 attached to my W? It's attached by multiplication, and the opposite of multiplying is dividing. If I do it to one side of my equal sign, I have to do it to both sides to keep my equations balanced. So I have 1 divided by negative 4, or negative 1 over 4, is equal to negative 4 divided by negative 4 is just 1. So that's 1w. When we have that 1 being multiplied by our letter, it's not really necessary to write it. It's not wrong if you write it, but it's just a little cumbersome, right? So our final answer here is negative 1/4 equals w. I do hope that you start to get more comfortable with fractions as the year go on, because fractions are actually really great to work with once you have their rules down, versus decimals are actually a little trickier to work with sometimes. So let's check it out. Delta math, negative 1 over 4, submit. Yes, okay. And fractions are actually a lot easier to work with as you get into Algebra 2, pre-calculus, calculus, trig, some of those more involved topics, math topics. It's just a little nicer to work with fractions. Okay, let's try another one. Write your answer in fully simplified form. Again, this is pretty intuitive. We know that r is going to equal negative 1, right? You might be able to see that right off the bat. It's a simple problem, but we're not just learning how to be intuitive, we're learning how to develop our steps for solving, okay? And whenever we're solving, we're using those inverse operations. So I want to really think through each step that I'm doing here, okay? Okay, my inverse operations, I'm going to get rid of addition and subtraction. I don't have any of that. Then I get rid of my division and multiplication. So I know I've got negative 7 being multiplied by my r. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. If I do it to one side of the equal sign, I have to do it to both sides of the equal sign. 7 divided by negative 7, that gives me a negative 1. Negative 7 divided by negative 7 gives me a positive 1, and I'm left with just my r. I don't really need to write that multiply by 1, so I know, hey, my answer is negative 1 equals r, or r equals negative 1. Okay, so we're really focusing here on the process of solving. Okay, that's what I really want you thinking about. Let's see if they give us any different ones. Nope, all multiplication, it looks like. Okay, so just continue on. Hopefully you're thinking about those division steps.